There's a lot of space.
This woman is hard. Good job.
Then it makes us feel like we got an audience. Come on, ladies.
By the way, when are you going to run for office?
Much, much better.
You know there's an organizer in every group.
Yeah. I should be starting saving you the donation already. Is that 2020? You're like on fire. I've retired. I put my hat of running office, so I'll give it to you. Okay, awesome. So thank you so much for hanging with us. This is our last panel, and we'll also do the conclusion. Wasn't it a great day today?
Yes.
Yes, give yourself a round of applause. You know, it took 8 weeks, I think, or 9 weeks, I don't know, with giving a Humphrey team a headache, because these guys are so amazingly well organized in the way they do things. And I wasn't kidding when I said, don't bother, we'll do this in an African way. But Deb Fitzgerald and amazing Tanisha White and everyone else at the U was really, at the Humphrey was really helpful. And we did work hard a lot. And next year, and then there's Tanisha, and everyone was coming, and we were meeting and really learning. We have learned a lot of how the U organizes, so now we know when they're saying we need to start things organizing 4 months earlier. We will sympathize with them because they have so many things to do, so I have so much respect and so much compassion for you, Deb, and everyone else. And I just also want to thank, before I start, our incredible Isuroon team, Christine Dice, who's way back. Thank you so much. I can sleep because you're around me. You're an incredible organizer and so helpful, so I'm forever grateful to you. We want to just do summary, and also since Linda had said forward, and that's not disrespectful because I cannot remember all the titles that this incredible woman has. We want to open the mics to you and really do conversation. And the final panel is how do we progress? You heard a lot, incredible women today, about not only challenges, but also opportunities. So with that said, I'll give everyone a few minutes to say something. And we have Simone, who did not say today anything, and she's kind of new to the panel today. Simone, would you please introduce yourself and say a few words of what you do and what you think of what happened today and your work and how it impacts women of African descent and other communities. Please welcome Simone.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Simone Gbolo, and I'm the National Director for an organization called Public Policy and International Affairs Program. We're a fellowship program that focuses on cultivating young people to go into public service-oriented work, whether it's domestically or international types of work. And we provide support. We provide academic training. We provide financial support as well for students from underrepresented backgrounds to go into the field of public service. And today for me has just been full. I'm full right now, not necessarily from lunch, but from just all of what the speakers have brought forth in terms of feeling supported, feeling affirmed in this space, feeling not isolated, like I'm the only one doing this work, that you all are doing the work, and that it helps me to continue doing the work that I feel that needs to be done in terms of impacting young people and helping them shape their futures. And so I think in terms of progressing forward, I have lots of thoughts, and how my work connects to some of the themes of today is that we really also need to be thinking about, I think that the theme that for me personally has been coming up after hearing all of the talks and all of our panelists is how do we engage young people. And so we can do all this work, we can hear all the lovely panelists, but we need to have young people part of these conversations, engaging them in meaningful ways, because once I'm tired, retired, or gone from this planet, someone has to be able to be in a place to do the work and continue the work. And so I'm always challenged, even in my work, is how do I engage my alumni to be part of the decision making? How do I engage young people who are taking part of my program to be part of the decision making? And how do we start to train them as the future who's going to keep this work going forward? So I'm challenged particularly about that thought, and would welcome any conversation around that.
Dean Bloomberg, do you have something to complete or to say about? You know, like I'm having normal conversation. You can tell I'm just a citizen. So you're wonderful. You do so much, and you've heard a lot today. Can you talk about mentorship and leadership development a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I am really pleased with how things went today, and it was fun I wasn't able to be here the whole day, but to step in and out of the back of the auditorium and hear the comments and see the energy was really, really fun. Then to have some conversations with people I knew and people I didn't know during the breaks was illuminating, and it made me think about something that I wanted to share with you in this idea about how is it that we move forward and where do you go next after something like this. And it's come up in a couple of different ways. I might word it differently. But this morning in my opening comments, I talked about if we tell a story well and true and authentically, then maybe out of it might emerge some universal truths, so that what might be relevant to women who are a part of a Somali diaspora may also be true for all women if we look for what the universal truths are. And one of the things that has come to me throughout the day is how often I think women, particularly women who want to step up and assume a leadership role, either in a position of power or in their communities in an informal way, in all kinds of different ways, how often we kind of get sliced and diced. We are this, but we're not that. We're a little bit of this, but we're not enough of that. We're too aggressive, we're not aggressive enough. We're not educated enough, we're too educated. We've got, we've abandoned our families to focus on our community, all of these things. And it's not right, obviously. I think we'd all agree to that. I think what I've been thinking about is what is it like to demand to be treated as a whole person? That all of us, we're all perfectly who we are right now. We're not too much of something or not enough of something else. And I've been thinking about that for me personally. Fartun mentioned this morning, I'm the first female dean of the Humphrey School, which I think is kind of cool and kind of sad, right? Well, yes, thank you. And so it's been a bit of an interesting year of listening to people dissect me in ways that I don't think that men in these roles get dissected. What I am, what I'm not. Are my kids okay? Because I'm the dean. You're like, well, my kids are 30, so they better be okay. But it is interesting. How does your spouse handle this? Oh. So that's one of the things I've been thinking about. We're all whole people, and we should demand to be seen that way.
Thank you, Ambassador Linda.
Good. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been extraordinary for me. I'm full as well. And it's just been amazing. So abiding by my rule of 5, as we were sitting through most of the programs today, I kept writing down words that seemed to come up that were important and that were implied. And so I'll share 5 words that I heard today that I think are important for us to move forward. The first word I heard was diversity. We didn't talk about it a lot, but that's what this is about. It's about opening up and being different and accepting differences. When I walk in a room, I always gauge the room. I see who's there. I see who's there who looks like me. I see who doesn't look like me. I see who look alike and how they're seated with each other. If I walk in the room and there are only black women in the room, I'll say, something's missing from this room. If I walk in the room and they're all white men, which is normally the case, I'll say something is missing. And I find that people don't know. They don't analyze the rooms that they are in, so they never can figure out. They know me now, but when I first started this, they couldn't figure out what was wrong in the room. It's like there's a missing table or a missing chair. But it's a missing person. It's missing people. It's missing diversity. And diversity is really important for the richness of every person in the room. Our differences are important, and we need to have diversity. The second word I wrote was inclusion. We have to be more inclusive as a people and as a society. And what I love about this room is that nobody's talking about where they came from. They're all talking about where they are here today and who they are today, and not looking at things that is not inclusive. And I think that's an important point. The third, and this is related, unity. We have been a unified group today. And I hope that we can keep that unity as we move forward, to see how we can use that unity, whether it's voting, as I talked about earlier, or it's organizing a movement. All of those things are really, really important. We must remain unified. And then I wrote a word that I didn't hear, but I saw, and that was compassion. I truly believe in compassionate leadership. Occasionally, people think if you're compassionate, you're weak. And I think it takes strength to be compassionate, to care about the person who's sitting next to you, to care about the person who lives next to you, to care about someone who is in need, and to give that person of yourself because you're compassionate about that person. And again, that's what I heard all of you do every day of your lives. And then finally, the most important word, leadership. If you see a problem, stand up and take care of it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you. That's true leadership. And every single person in this room convinced me that you are true leaders. And as you leave this room today, take those leadership skills and lead for good and lead with compassion. So thank you.
Wow. So as Kenya said today, the Queen is tired. We Black women, African descent women are working hard, and I think all women are working hard. And as we're talking about, we're taking care of everyone else but ourselves. So a little bit of statistics. African descent women are the leading cause of heart disease, diabetes, all kinds of cancer, close to Native women. And so with all the stresses that come from, so for us to move forward, we need to talk about self-care. And when I usually hear self-care, I used to hear as a public health educator, I always think, oh, they're talking about that damn gym, I have to go to gym. And I don't like that. I just don't like that. I'm a nomad. I would love to walk if I can walk. So I have a nomad gene, I want to walk. But as one of my friends said, hey, Fartun, self-care. But I'm a health educator, but someone is educating me. Self-care is not just going to the gym. And it's about many things. So before I give our panelists to what do they do for self-care, and also including the social connectedness, the self-care, I'm struggling with it still. So the best way that I feel I do my self-care is really being connected. And through the work I do, I see 20 Somali women every day. I see African-American women every day, and I see also white women already every day. So being really emotionally connected reduces my blood pressure, actually, in a way where, like, I have to keep salt on my bucket because my blood pressure is low. God helps me with all of my work I'm doing. I have a low blood pressure. So how do we really have both self-care and also social connection? Simone, what do you do for self-care and social connectedness, and what can you tell these young women who all of them want to be Michelle Obama?
Including myself.
Yes.
So I appreciate the panel that came before us because they started to really dig into that notion of how they were taking care of themselves while they were doing this work. So I think this is really a continuation of that conversation. And so I think it's self-care for me is something have been working on, continually work on, and give myself a lot of grace around, because it's easy to get deep into the work. And deep into the work where you're doing so much, you're working a lot of hours, you're doing everything, trying to do everything on time in the right way, whatever that means. And so it's a constant reminder to myself of, what am I doing to just be checking with myself and checking with the people around me that I care about. So for me, I have, I think, an awesome tribe of women that are part of my life, that I can pick up and dial the phone, right now, and they'll pick up if I need them or send a text. And my tribe has been what's really helped me sustain those women, that if I'm running through any issues, whether it's personal, professional, dreaming of our next vacation that we take girls trips, I can have those conversations with. For me, self-care also is developing myself. So finding avenues and opportunities for advancement, whether it's going to a conference like this, spending a day with other women who are like-minded and embody some of the things that I care about, or whether it's a professional development type of conference that's about a subject that I'm passionate about. So if always constantly I'm like the queen of finding conferences and in warm places. I report to the Lord so she knows. I'm always making requests for things. I just spent 3 weeks in Ghana where it was a site visit to playing and planning a trip to take students back in December that was just approved. And so those things kind of keep me connected to work, but also is a way for me to be affirmed because, you spend 3 weeks in Ghana, I see people looking like me everywhere, and the billboards look like me, and the advertisements on the bottles look like me. So being able to do things like that, I do travel quite a bit. I'm blessed that I've worked hard and been able to afford to travel, and so I try to do that as much as I can. But I really think even coming back home and thinking about home, the people around me are really helps to keep me grounded. And not to knock the gym, I'm not a fan of the gym either. But I just installed a punching bag in my living room, and it's the best thing I've probably ever done in a very long time. So I go ham on my punching bag whenever I need to, at least a couple times a week. So I'm helping take care of myself health-wise as well. And I think just educating yourself about healthy practices. My mother was a nurse, and so she always advocated, thinking about your health. And she was a nurse, but also a phenomenal cook that used butter and all the good stuff. So it was always this kind of constant balance between all of that, but just trying to also make healthy, conscious choices about what I put in, because as I get older, I'm realizing what I put in affects everything I do and everything around me. So that's a little bit about how I practice self-care.
I don't do enough of it, maybe. About 3 years ago, I was at a workshop, and at the beginning of the day, they did this icebreaker where we all stood in a circle, and one of the things they wanted us to do was to say, what's the absolute first thing you do in the morning? And we just went around the room and talked about it, and about like the first 5 or 6 people all said the same thing. I look at my phone. And I was really shocked that was what everybody did. And then I realized either I'm going to say the same thing or I'm going to lie. And you know what? The real truth is, I lied. I did. It's not terrible. I'm telling you this true confession. But that day I did. I made up something like the second thing I do. I don't know. I greet my husband. I don't know what I said, but it's the truth is, I woke up and the very first thing I did was look at my phone. And I think that's probably true for many of you. Yeah. And that day, honest to goodness, that day I made a conscious decision that that's not how I'm going to start my day anymore. That is not the way I want to start my day. So this is really the truth. It's a simple thing, but it matters hugely to me. I have a window in our bedroom that faces east, and the very first thing I do is get out of bed, and it's not really a prayer. I just stand in the window and I greet the day. The first thing I want to do is have this moment moment of gratitude. Regardless of what crap is going to come at me that day, the first thing I'm going to do is stand and face east and say, it's a gorgeous sunrise, or look at that snowstorm, or whatever it is. But I'm just going to take it. And then, the second thing or the third thing, I'm probably still going to grab my phone, but it's not going to be the first thing anymore. So that's a big part of it. The other thing I wanted to say about self-care is that I think Linda talked about leadership, and I believe that we're all capable of acts of great leadership and should act on those. I worry sometimes that we're reinforced the most when we go it alone. Like people who say, God, what you did was so amazing. You did something so incredible. And it becomes seductive, to get this great feedback. And pretty soon you can fall into this trap of feeling like you need to be everybody's hero. And you're going to kill yourself doing it. I worry about that for myself. Am I going to kill myself doing the things that I'm most reinforced for when what I should be doing is building my coalitions and supporting other women and building a network? And some of that work is silent, and you're not often immediately reinforced for it as much as you are for, giving a great speech or, taking someone down in a really tough way or whatever it is. I want to rebel against that and do the work that's more about hosting and building up community as opposed to being a hero, because I think that's also self-care.
Okay. I don't pick up my phone first thing in the morning.
Liar.
Liar. Starting tomorrow, I'm not going to pick up my phone. It's interesting to think, people ask me all the time, what do I do? And for a while, for about 5 or 6 years, the gym was my friend. I got a trainer. I went to the gym 5 days a week, and I'm not doing it now, and I'm feeling the pain. So I'm thinking it's time to go back to my gym routine. But the thing that I do two things that people always laugh about, and they're things that exhaust me. One is I love to cook. I'm like your mother. And I love to entertain. And so I cook, even if I'm not having people over. If I have a really, really bad day, at work, South Sudan goes to war, and I'm at work until 10 o'clock at night, I might come home at 10 o'clock at night and start cooking. And people will say to me, like a friend will call, what are you doing? And it's 10 o'clock and I'm cooking red beans and rice. And she's like, that takes like 2 hours. You gonna eat it? I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna cook it. We'll eat it another day. It relaxes me to cook. I love just standing in the kitchen, chopping onions and preparing. It's for me, it's like art. Preparing an amazing meal that people will love. I do, when I'm overseas, I did something called gumbo diplomacy, where I would just have people in my kitchen, and I'm cooking, and they're talking, and we're all chopping onions, and that's when I give the onions to everybody else to chop. And it's relaxing. Or my husband will say, I know you're tired, let's go out to eat. For me, I know I'm tired. I want to get in the kitchen and let myself go and just relax and not think about it. And I don't do recipes. Sometimes I'll put a recipe out, but I never follow it. I just kind of have it there as a guide. And I create my own food. And people will ask me for the recipe, and then I have to make it up. And it's never what I did when I was cooking. And they're like, she just doesn't want to share her recipe. I'm like, I'm one of those kind of cooks. I don't cook with a recipe. I just, you can give me 10 things and say, create a meal out of it, and I'll create a meal out of it. And that's very relaxing to me. But as you were talking about taking care of yourself, I wrote down kind of all my ailments. And I have hypertension, and I have high cholesterol, and I have arthritis, and I've had breast cancer. And so I've gone through all of that. And what, for me, is important is to not let those things define me, to never let them define me. That I'm going to move, everything might hurt in the morning, but I'm going to get out of the bed and I'm going to move forward, because I feel that if you ever give in to those things, they will engulf you. So you don't want to give in to whatever ails you because it becomes you. And that's how I take care of myself, you know. One of the speakers was talking about she was in so much pain. I can't remember. She's with you.
Yeah.
And she said, you know, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, my shoulder's hurting so bad. I need to find out what painkiller she got. You know, it might help. But you can't give into it. I live my life seeing adversity as a friend. Anything that's bad that happens in my life shows me my strengths. It shows me where I can move forward. And then every once in a while, and I'll end here, I shut down. And when I shut down, I turn my TV on, not on the news, but some family channel or Hallmark channel or Oprah's channel, and watch syrupy love stories and movies. And I'll do it all day. And my husband will say, are you going to get up and get dressed this morning? Nope. I'm going to sit here and I'm an early morning person, I'm going to sit here from 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night watching movies. And I've done it. I don't do it often, but it is so cathartic to do that. Just to sit there, lay there, not do anything, not comb your hair, just lay there and watch syrupy movies all day long. And so it's relaxing.
That is so. We'll start with you, Ambassador Linda. So we have so many young generation girls who are now into Twitter and Facebook, and there's so much bullying going on. What can we teach? You talked about the amazing strength of you deal with the health issues, and we all do. I got diagnosed osteoporosis, and I was age 31, and I'm still kicking and doing whatever things I need. But how do we deal with these people hurting each other in terms of, like, what can you tell me if people call me names? And Twitter. How do you deal with the social media nuts?
You have to find a way to ignore this. You can't let it become part of you. Sometimes people, when I left the Trump administration, there was a newspaper article called The Drip Drip, and there was my picture in the Washington Post, The Drip Drip. And so my husband then decided to go online and started reading the comments. And he was so horrified. He woke me up and he was like, I can't believe I'm going to answer these comments. And, one of them was, who cares that she's gone? She should go to jail with Hillary. I'm like, geez. And I just ignored it. I said to him, he says, I'm going to respond. I'm like, when you respond, you give these people power. Don't give them power. Ignore it. You know who you are. Once you let it affect you, it becomes you. So you really do have to ignore it. And I always taught my children, and I heard my daughters, I was talking to someone about, you don't know the impact you have on your children and whether the sacrifices you made for your children, if they realize it. One of the things I taught my children from the time they were little kids, because they were both very popular in school, a son, an absolute introvert but popular, and a daughter, an extrovert like her mom and extraordinarily popular, and they had close friends. And I said, when you're with your friends, look around the room and look for the person who is not in your circle. Look for that person who's on the outside of the circle, the person that everybody is ostracizing, the person that everybody's calling a name, and you bring that person into your circle. And once that person becomes in your circle, that person's in the circle of everyone else. And they become part of everyone else. And I heard my daughter say to someone, my mom told me this. She said, just last week I heard her say, my mom told me this, and I always made sure I was inclusive. That's the word we were talking, that I found people to bring into the circle who may not have been in the circle, the less fortunate. And the reason I taught my children that is because I was a person who was out of the circle when I was young, because I came from a poor family. And so you're never included if you come from a poor family. And I remember the one or two people who brought me in to their circle of friendship. But I was always outside. And so you need to look for, as young people, look for people who are outside your circle, look for people you may have things in common with, and stand up for people who are being bullied. Because if you stand up for people who are being bullied, then other people, the bullies, will stop. Bullies are bullies because they are lacking confidence. And so they use bullying to build their confidence up about themselves. And when you stand up to a bully and you got other people standing up with you, it will shut them down in heartbeat. And so you need to help people who are being bullied, and also don't let people bully you. It's a real difficult thing that is happening in our society now. I don't know if I could have my kids in high school now, that I hear what happens in high schools.
Dean Bloomberg, you're a principal?
Yeah, I want to speak to that from the lens of being a former K-12 principal. I completely agree with everything that Linda said, and as adults, I do think the most important thing we can do is to ignore and not engage. I can't stress that enough. When I think about this through the lens of being a principal, I also think every single one of us have to remember that we've got young people watching us. That's how they're learning. And I can't stress enough that I believe cyberbullying is more life-threatening than just about any other kind of bullying, because there are sometimes fewer bystanders to get in the way, and people feel absolutely unfettered. So it may not feel life-threatening to you as an adult who get taken to task, but if you're a 14-year-old pubescent girl who's being viciously cyberbullied, we've seen far too many girls take their lives because of it. And so how we respond and how we engage and how we stand as role models in this cyberspace, particularly when it gets vicious, has, I think, really serious implications for a younger generation, and I think we have to take the high ground.
So we have about 20 minutes. Wait, we got about 15 minutes. We want to open up. Simone, do you want to add something to this about bullying, and how do you, not bullying, but how do you really stay out of, if someone is bullying you or calling you names? And usually the young women who are becoming very outspoken, and now we have Twitter and Facebook. What do you tell your younger generation that are coming into your school or your program?
Sure, I'll just add really quick two things. One is you have to constantly remind yourself where you're being affirmed, and that the apps on here and the social spaces that exist is not where you find that affirmation. So that's one. And then two is kind of connected but not directly, is that it's okay to take a break from social media. I don't have Instagram,
Amen.
Snapchat, or Facebook apps on my phone right now because I'm on a social media detox. And it's probably the best thing I've done in a while. I haven't done one in a long time, so I'm doing one again. And it's hard for me. I love them all. I mean, I could lose 3 hours on Instagram easily. But what I'm finding is that through this detox, I'm focusing my time and attention on other things that are more important.
Thank you. So we'll take a few questions for the panelists. Anyone?
It's been a long day.
I know. And we have food still outside, so when you leave here, you'll eat too. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Morugi, and I am with the Kenyan Women in Minnesota organization and a grad student here. I have a daughter who's a senior, who's a little activist and trying to make changes in her school district. And what I have noticed is she has a lot of support from me, but there are many kids, black kids, students of color that do not have even what we've experienced here today, and they really need it. Mm-hmm. And I am just wondering how, maybe even in the next conference, because when I told her about this, she really wanted to skip school and come, but then she had tests and everything. Mm-hmm. This is something that would be so valuable for them because it's missing for them. And there's a lot that they're going through. Even that sexual harassment and all that online is big. And sometimes they don't even recognize it for what it is. So like one time we were at the library, she was reading for her ACT. Some kid, some white boy comes and writes a note and throws it where she was seated, saying, "Meet me in the bathroom and suck my you-know-what." And she didn't even know that that is sexual. So I was like, "We're going to the security, they need to know." And she's like, "No, ma'am, we go through this all the time online. The guys are always saying these kind of things." I said, but yet she's very strong against sexual harassment and all that, very strong on it, but doesn't even recognize it. So I said, this is what it is. This is what it looks like. How many more are going through this and don't know? How many more are going through so many other things that the school is not even supporting them on, and then having to fight their battles themselves and then getting sent home and all that. And then the other part too is, just like they need us as their elders, maybe, we also need elders. And maybe in the next meeting or forum like this that we have, to just even have a panel of our women elders. There's a lot of wisdom there that we are disconnected from, and I hope we can have that, because I think we'll learn a lot from each other, so that we can build a community that has us, the young and the old. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I get the question about, because we deal with a lot of first and second generation immigrants, and so what we're dealing with, did a research with the youth that looked into smoking for teenage Somali girls, and we did a hookah, or they call it shisha. And we were stunned what we found out, that some of them smoke 5 times. And we also ask about sexual harassment, and we also ask about parent involvement. And your kid is lucky, and a lot of parents really want to get involved with their kids. Some of them have 7 kids, some have some disability, and also the school system is not really very welcoming if you're a new immigrant and don't speak the language. So this is where the parent empowering could come in. This is where working with the teachers and trying to educate the educators would be one. But we absolutely have to teach our girls. Some of them have been sexually abused. Now we're doing another research to talk about, do they even know what sexual abuse is? And so it's really some of the reasons that I need some sort of like turning off my phone or my emails, because we see a lot of young girls who have been sexually abused and sexually harassed, and we don't know what to do. And most of the immigrants are in denial. So we need more education, I agree with you, and we also need more of empowering the young people to create an avenue of reporting. Can anyone add to that something about what that question about how do you educate? Linda, you talked about immigrants.
You know, I visited a school in Georgia, Clarkson High School, and Clarkson had the highest population. I think 91% of the students were immigrants, and with a large number of languages. And so I asked the school if they ever talked about or allowed this kids to talk about the countries they came from, if they would have an international day or a Somali day where the Somali students would talk about their culture and talk about their language. And I advised all the Americans to make sure that they had a friend who was non-original American, someone who was a hyphenated American from another country, and make it their commitment to learn their language. And again, this was something that the school had never done. And I heard later that they had put this program into place, and it had brought out some of the students who were very quiet, sitting in the corner in the back of the room and not participating. So people shouldn't deny their culture. They should embrace their being in America, but they should also bring out the richness of their own culture and try to share it. I think there's a tendency for immigrants to try to be more American than American, and that puts tremendous pressure on kids in school because they're trying to fit in, and they are different, and their differences should be part of part of their strengths.
Can I just add?
Yes,
I just wanted to really congratulate you on pointing out to your daughter that receiving a note like that is harassment, and you don't have to accept it. Because I think that part of what we have to do with sexual misconduct in general is to renegotiate what's acceptable. And so, if that's perceived as acceptable, then we can imagine what's going to happen next. And so to point that out, it's not going to stop it tomorrow by helping her understand that it's not okay, but it is going to help redefine what's acceptable behavior in that space. So congratulations for doing that.
For sure. Simone, you okay? Another question?
I have a question here.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Can everybody hear me pretty well? My name is Marian, and I'm an undergraduate student here studying business marketing and human resources development. I'll be graduating this May, and this morning I was able to take part of just hearing the different types of conversations about the economy and about the future generations. For me, I am a first-generation student, as many of immigrant children are. I was born in the United States. However, I sometimes feel like because of my mother's experience being an immigrant, I feel like I came in with her to the U.S., if that makes sense. I don't know. Like at an early age, translating. Like kids, immigrant children have so much skills that are underappreciated that not a lot of people realize. The ability to be bilingual, even trilingual in some cases, the ability to read and write, the ability to help more than one parent. It's just, it sometimes becomes, even though it's like benefit, it also becomes an obstacle and a challenge for the child while they're growing up, right? So as a first generation, first in my family to graduate and first to be graduating from college as well, I'm a little bit concerned about the future, like when I go into, I don't know, if I decide to work in the government or the corporation world, I've interned so many places, but then at the same time, like every place I've interned, I've realized every organization has a culture. And sometimes I feel like my identity is kind of like a barrier, like I have to put a different mask on, like, hello, you guys, how is it going? Top of the morning tea. I'm not a morning person, but I pretend for the money, for the experience. But at the same time, the barriers, they come in because I don't understand, and I'm speaking also in terms for, just any other person that's an emerging professional getting into their, entry-level positions or wanting to excel, wanting to be heard. How did you start out? And also, and the question applies to all of you all, but how did you start out? And also, what's the best advice for emerging professionals in today's network, in today's world? Thank you.
That's a big question.
Simone,
Go for it, Simone.
go for
I
it.
can start anywhere. I'm still thinking.
Yep. Thank you, by the way,
Yeah,
for the
great
brave question.
One of the things I think about when I think about your question is the ability to learn how to navigate spaces. And so you're going to be in and out of different spaces throughout your career. And you have to figure out how to do that with staying true to yourself, but then also being aware of everyone else around you. And so something I used to tell students when I advise students was like, you kind of have to fake it till you make it, in some sense, where it's not that you're not being true to who you are, but that you have to be aware of your surroundings and what some of the norms may be to help you be able to enter those spaces and thrive. And I think one thing that's been helpful for me is having mentors. And not just having one. So it's one thing to say I have a mentor, but having multiple people in my life that as I'm transitioning either into new jobs or new professional spaces or even academic spaces that I know will give me guidance and support as I navigate those spaces. And mentors they're just invaluable because they've been through it already. So they've made mistakes, they've fallen, they've gotten back up. And hopefully, ideally you want to find a mentor who is willing to share that information to you and with you so that you don't fall necessarily and you can move forward faster in whatever you're trying to do in terms of your career. Those are a few thoughts. I might have some later. But.
You sound really, really impressive to me, and I think you should apply to the Humphrey School of Public Affairs.
That's what she was asking, so.
in my role, I've had the opportunity, not that you're asking about grad school, but it relates. I've had the opportunity to read hundreds of applications for graduate school of people about your age, graduating from college, moving on, and there's this really powerful way to talk about your experiences as assets that makes an enormous difference in how you tell your story. So when we think about the things that you said, when we think about first generation young adults having an amazing set of skills that a lot of us who grew up in this country and have had multiple generations in this country and have been squarely in the middle class, we don't have those resilient assets. And how you tell that story to an audience that may not automatically see them as assets is really valuable. So I would say, in addition to mentorship, I completely agree with Simone. Get yourself a good coach, somebody who's going to say, you know what you just said sounded like a deficit, and it's an asset. Let's roll it back and try it again. How are you presenting yourself? What are you saying about your bilingual skills? What are you saying about the fact that you might not have held a paying job? Let me tell you about the experience I had navigating translation skills for a mother in a medical setting. Just how is it that you tell those things that make you so strong and so talented and so resilient now? That would be my advice.
I don't know that I have anything new to add what others have said. You sound like you got it together. And again, if you need validation, find a mentor to help validate who you are. As you were describing this, I was thinking of myself. I didn't come from an immigrant family, but I was the oldest child of parents who were illiterate and really, really hardworking. And then I go off to this university and everybody's middle class except me. And I wasn't sure that before I left my town that I even knew that I was poor, because everybody was poor. I was like everybody else until I left. And then when I left, I realized that I was different. And for a while, I wanted to conceal that difference, all those differences. And then I realized that being different was my strength. And it was why I was who I was and why I was different from all the other people in the world. And I remember I was with my husband once we were driving down some road, and there was a car broken down the side of the road, and there were like 10 people in it. It was a whole carload of Haitian immigrants who had been picking fruit somewhere, and their car had broken down. And my husband went, stop, and I'm like, no, we're not gonna stop. We don't know these people. I mean, are you crazy? We're gonna stop on the side? And he looked at me and he says, have you forgotten where you came from? And it was like a slap. And I immediately thought, this could be my parents sitting on the side of the road. Yes, we're gonna stop and help these people. And we did. And so you just remember where you came from, and that where you came from gives you the strength to navigate in all kinds of worlds, including helping people like yourself who may be going through the same difficulties and may not have the same strength and willpower that you have.
So one quick observation that we receive a lot of Somali interns and non-Somali interns. Our organization actually would not have existed if not the Student of Public Health of University of Minnesota. They kept us going, and lately Somali students have discovered us. What I've seen is these kids do so many opportunities of internship and volunteer, but when you look at their application resume, it's like a one-pager. It doesn't really show what you have done, and what we have been doing lately is giving them specific tasks and then attaching them to professional resume developer. Yeah. And by the time the internship ends, so they come in to do an internship, but actually what they're here for, our space, is saying, when this kid leaves, I call it kids because they all could be my kids. When this person leaves our space, what would their resume look like? So I am 100% sure that you don't need anybody, but what you need is what I just said. While your incredible talent is not reflecting what people values, which is how you tell your story, your stories, and what your resume will look like. So what you're asking is simple things that can be done. And last thing I want to talk about mentorship. We have heard a lot of young women who've had asked, not all men are bad, but lately we've heard that a lot of young women who are mentored by men have been, done things wrong. So I would strongly advise you, like Simone said, make your mom part of the network, make your uncles, make me and others, like everyone else, your circle, and let's talk about that. So I want to give final question, and then we will wrap it up. Go ahead.
My name is Shirhan, and again, earlier I talked about how I am actively involved with the youth in my community. I go to the school board meetings, and a lot of the times people assume what kids need without giving them a platform to express what they need. And so we formed a committee where we're going to be having youth come and talk. And there's another project where I'm working on called the Visionary Project. And it's a project to actually celebrate and acknowledge the youth, the ones that have finished 8th grade, the freshmen, the seniors that are graduating. And my thing is, I want it to be a community-based event where the community helps, but I reach out to the community and I talk with people, and people know me in the community, but when the time actually comes, people just like to talk about it, and it's something that I'm struggling with because unity is key. I am a broke college student. I am not able to fund a lot of the things, and it's really challenging, so that's something that I've been dealing with, and I would love to hear feedback on that.
So the problem is that the community is talking but not showing up?
No, we have a community focus team where we're bringing the youth, and the school board is involved, and we're changing policies as we go, and it's going to take a really long time. But it's something that's on my own. It has nothing to do with the community itself. It's a fun project where it's like around graduation, where we just acknowledge and celebrate and bring people that speak, and just celebrating and having a fun time. That's a big part, especially for kids, and having mentors. And I wish there were more people of me that are into the schools and actively are involved with the kids, and it's not like that. And sometimes I look like one of the high school kids, and they don't take me so seriously, and I'm like, no.
So your question is, how do we get more people?
How we get more people involved, like all organizations. Yeah, like mentorship would be really nice, but also having other people that also look like the kids saying, hey, I went through this, I did this, we are a part of this, we are acknowledging you, we see what you guys are, we've been there. And we don't have that in Rochester, Minnesota.
Simone, do you guys have anything over there?
You're in Rochester?
Yeah, I'm not from here.
Okay, so there are a lot of so what you're going through it's not new. Believe me, Isuroon is 8 years old now. I think it's 8 years old, and the work that you're doing, we struggle because remember we grew up a culture where you really don't know much until you get married, and then you take care of your family. So what you're seeing is that families are so busy, but also so afraid to let go and give power to their children. So I would say that don't give up.
Of course, never.
And also is maybe we will talk later and figuring out how do you do more organizing and talking to the families.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. So for the other community stuff, that's something that I do regularly. The event that I'm doing is just a once a year once a year kind of thing where we just celebrate and acknowledge the youth. And then I myself go to the schools throughout the year and just talk with the students, have lunch with them, and just hear what they have to say. And like somebody that I make my presence visible so that once I build relationships and they see me, they can come and talk with me.
So community organizing maybe is what the deal is?
Yeah, like a community organizer with like once a year kind of event. It's not a continuous thing.
So there are trainings about community organizing. I think there were a couple people here today that we can connect you to. So then the idea is how do you increase your people who can come and speak to the families in the community, also empower you. So we'll get connected to the community organizing trainings.
Thank you.
Thanks. Final question before we wrap up? Okay. All right, go ahead quickly.
I just want to thank you for this opportunity. It has been an amazing day for me. And I learned a lot. I do a lot around social justice. I sit on the social justice board in my church, but it's predominantly white. So very often people look at me as if I'm crazy. Why do you go with them? You invite them for something and they don't come because I am sitting with people who do not look like me. And I am so fortunate that they are so supportive of me, and my presence in that community is actually influencing the choices that they have for their social justice projects. But it has been such a conflict. I had this internal conflict about, am I doing the right thing? Am I going the right way? But after I heard what Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield said, I feel even more confident that I'm doing the right thing. And I'm with the right people who support me. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. So we have, moving forward, where do we go? What are the hopes and dreams for women of African descent and all women? I'll start. I want to make $1. I don't want to make 50 cents per dollar. What about you? That's the hope I have. I'm talking about money. We're all sitting in a student loan. I want to make $1 equal to men. There goes that.
Okay.
Mine would be engage young people in a meaningful way in order to create a legacy.
Okay, awesome.
I would say that the line that we've heard a lot since one of the UN conferences, that women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. I think we need to live into that so that it really looks like it's true in the world.
As I sat here listening to everyone, and I started thinking about where are the boys? And I know that's a kind of dumb question, but if we are to have a society where women's rights are respected, we have to raise sons who respect women's rights. And so what I've left here with today is to make sure that I continue to engage with my own son, to ensure that he knows the importance of respecting the rights of women, and that I will remind him if I see him step across the line. Because, and it's interesting. I used to work with Afghan refugees, and I did this whole thing on what Afghan women need. And one of the things they said, you guys have been talking about educating our girls, and we want our girls educated. But now you're not educating the boys, and they're going to marry ignorant men who will not respect their rights. So we have to make this into a community-wide approach that also teach boys that you don't give a girl a note, because I am sure that boy didn't think he was harassing her sexually, but he's going to do it a second time and a third time and a fourth time, and by the time he does it the fifth time, he's like, nobody told me. So somebody needs to tell him. Good. So that's why I thought about it. I'm like, somebody needs, you taught your daughter, he needs to also know that he made a mistake, and maybe he won't do it again, and he'll become a champion and not an offender.
Yeah.
Please give a round of applause to our panelists.
You guys.
Thank you so much. I am so grateful that you came and learned, and we'll send the survey and you let us know what we can do better. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day. Thank you, our panelists. Thanks.
Now you have us forget that.
But I, unlike you, did not cook.